it also goes to the really origins of the Walton Family Foundation, which I think are really important, which it is truly a family-led foundation. There are foundations out there in the country that have a family name associated with it, but they're no longer family-led. They may have been at one time. Yes. There are definitely some that are still very much so, but I really appreciate the fact that I get to work with such a visionary family.
Welcome to the 4 Bars Podcast. I'm Ken Leith.
And I'm Patty Leith. We are your hosts for some compelling dialogue, encouraging our listeners to strengthen their connections
and build strong communities, lifting each other up and connecting in ways that matter.
We named the podcast 4 Bars as a reference to how hard we work to find a 4 Bars connection on our devices.
And we wondered what could happen with relationships if we worked as hard at connecting.
Let's find out.
Welcome to 4 Bars. I'm your co-host, Ken Leith.
And I'm Patty Leith. Welcome back.
And we are very, very thrilled to have with us Robert Burns as our guest this week. Welcome, Robert.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Robert is the Director, Home Region Programs at the Walton Family Foundation.
Robert, welcome. We're so excited to hear your story. It's going to be great to get to know more about you. So,
thank you. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got here, what your past has looked like? Tell us your story.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the chance to share time with both of you. I have been in Northwest Arkansas for roughly about 3.5 years. Was fortunate to find out about the role at the Walton Family Foundation, and my partner and myself made the move to Northwest Arkansas. We absolutely love this region, the people, the place, and I'll touch a bit about that today. But my background, I grew up in North Carolina. I grew up in rural North Carolina. Grew up on a small family farm. We raised beef cattle, mostly for family consumption. But if you're to go back where I grew up, a lot of my cousins, uncles, my mom still lives in the house I grew up in.
Wow.
I find a lot of similarities between where I grew up and here in a lot of respects. And then I've had the privilege of living in some other states. I started my career in local government, worked in a county and a few cities, working in city planning, city management, made the move into the nonprofit field and worked for some national and local nonprofits. So spent some time really focused on workforce and affordable housing. And at one point got to do a lot of work in that across different states in the country. That was my first stint in philanthropy. I worked for an organization that was also a grant maker and really found how much I enjoyed that. And then most of my career has spent in that nonprofit field. Most recently, before coming to the Walton Family Foundation, I worked for Citigroup on the philanthropic side of the shop. And then we moved from Washington, D.C., to Northwest Arkansas, like I said, about 3.5 years ago. I've served on local boards in the past in prior roles. I do serve on a couple of national boards now. It's difficult for us to serve on local boards, given that we're a grantor to many organizations, but love that spirit of giving back in terms of board service.
Yeah, fantastic. One of the things I've come to learn about you is your heart for community and your passion for making communities great places to be. Where do you think that comes from? What brings you to the table with that mindset?
I've always thought that community was important, and I think part of that's the product of growing up rural, where you do have to rely often on your own. However, in situations where the community does come together, it always left a lasting impact on me. And often that would be disaster, which I see that taking place in a lot of cases where the community comes together. Yes. I also see it where folks are helping to build things on someone's property. Like I remember growing up, the community would come together, what people would call like a barn raising or putting things together. The spirit of church and the faith community played a role in my life. But I think really when I got to college is where it really started coming together for me, is the advent of being able to get involved in a lot of different groups on campus and creating that community, not only of the university, but things that reached out into the cities that were local there, helping people out, the spirit that really to me is about each of us has an obligation to give back to each other. So I think that was instilled at an early age. And I think that's an essential ingredient for communities.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. In our podcast, we are exploring good connections in work, community, life, and in general. And one of the things that we've really been exploring more deeply is just this whole concept of community building and an intentional approach to understanding what's needed and creating situations where there are activities and places and things for people to do together. And that's one of the things that I think is so amazing about what the Walton Family Foundation does. So what drew you to that job?
When the recruiter initially connected to me about the role, I read the description. And when I read the description about what the home region entails, the fact that home region includes for the foundation Northwest Arkansas and the Mississippi Delta, the fact that we, in that role, the individual will be working with cities and nonprofits, and the work really appealed to me. And then that sold it in the way of reading about the job. But I remember distinctly, and this was in the time of COVID, so a lot of the initial conversations were over Zoom. You're trying to kind of get a sense of people. That's a different era that we were all familiar with. But when I started having the conversations with team members that were on the interview panel, I just remember being struck by how just relatable the folks were on the other side. And I kept getting more and more excited about the role. And when I eventually was brought out for the first face-to-face interview, it just brought it home. I mean, it was really a role that excited me, the variety of things that I get to be exposed to. But as much as anything, it's about the people that we get to work with, the people that are of this community. I find this to be an extraordinary place when it comes to the way people do seek to be connected to each other. It's embedded in the culture here. And one hope that I have, that I think we have to always be cognizant of, is as we grow as a region, which we are growing tremendously, I don't want to lose sight of that. I think areas in other parts of the country have lost that essence, and I don't want Northwest Arkansas to lose that essence. And people may compare us to other cities, which in many ways, I think there's a compliment there, but I want Northwest Arkansas to be Northwest Arkansas.
It's kind of a magical place, I think. And it offers things that we have not seen in other communities that we've lived in. And there is a sense of everybody just really wants to support and help one another. Yeah. And I love that. I don't think that exists everywhere.
No, I think it permeates. And
it does.
The Family Foundation, we work a lot with, as an example, entrepreneurs. And if you think about the history of this region and think about the families that are here, those are some of the most creative entrepreneurs in the country. The Hunts, the Waltons, the Tysons, the Simmons. Yes. I mean, and we're seeing that growth continue. That legacy, that culture lives on. I love seeing the growth in the entrepreneurial community, the fact that people are discovering it, the fact that local talent, whether they be graduating from the University of Arkansas and they're already in some of the entrepreneurial programs there, or they've got a career here and they've decided they want to become part of one of the cycling accelerators or one of the outdoor rec programs. That ability to take that courageous leap and become an entrepreneur, that also, I think, really feeds into the culture. But what I hear entrepreneurs say when they're visiting the region is they find that contagious spirit. People want to help them out, which they've decided to move their businesses in some cases because of that.
And we have definitely met some of those folks to come into town. And to your point, you can't go out anywhere around town generally and not run into someone you have never met before and have a conversation. It's a place where people do slow down, stop, and have the conversation, which I really do appreciate. But you mentioned the families, the early entrepreneurs and what they brought in, and the fact that they are still investing in the communities, and they have a heart for the community, for the entire region itself. How does that connect in with the work that you do and what you see happening as far as future expansion and their role in it too?
Yeah, and I'll focus on the work we're doing, but I think it's important what you just said. these are families that have chosen to build the companies here
Yes.
and invest in the region. We can go to other parts of the country, the world, and see lots of cases where that hasn't happened. So that is a testament to those families and the individuals that created that initial vision of what some of these organizations could be. The fact that folks have continued to be here and embed, I think, is an important statement. It also goes to the really origins of the Walton Family Foundation, which I think are really important, which it is truly a family-led foundation. There are foundations out there in the country that have a family name associated with it, but they're no longer family-led. They may have been at one time. Yes. There are definitely some that are still very much so, but I really appreciate the fact that I get to work with such a visionary family who are highly engaged and very passionate about the work. We also, in addition to home region, the foundation has two additional programs. One is our education program, which I have a peer that leads that, and that's national. And then our environment program, I have a peer that leads that, and that is actually international. It's our only international program. So the three programs make up the overall composite largely of the foundation. What I love about home region is that we are hyper invested locally. We are place-based. Not only are we focused in Northwest Arkansas, we're focused on Benton and Washington counties. Those are the two counties that are home region. And then when you think about, or Northwest Arkansas, I mean, you think about the Delta, we focus on two counties in the Mississippi Delta, both in Arkansas, Phillips and Jefferson. And then we cross the river. The only county we're working in Mississippi is Coahoma. Okay. Coahoma is right across the river from Phillips County. So these place-based efforts really magnify the kind of impact you can have.
Right. Can you tell us a little bit about the types of things you're doing in the different areas? That to me is so fascinating.
Yeah, and I'll just say up front, we develop a strategy for each part of home region.
Okay.
And Northwest Arkansas is one of those plans. And in that, I touched upon one already, which is really development and cultivation of the entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, really taken off. We also think a lot about holistically what makes this region stay as welcoming, as vibrant as it can be. That's an essential component when it comes to quality of life. So we've been making additional investment into things like workforce housing. Housing prices have gone up demonstrably here in Northwest Arkansas. It's really important that folks that come here for a job or to start a business can also find a home that is close to schools, close to parks, have the ability to live a quality of life that they want to. So this housing element is critically important, and we're doing more of that. Transportation is vitally important. As the region grows, more people are here, more people are going to drive, they're going to take a bicycle, they're going to walk somewhere. How do we enhance additional forms of mobility? We're blessed with this amazing Razorback Greenway that roughly goes 40 miles, Bella Vista to Fayetteville. It's a pretty unique creation in any part of the country. We've got an effort going on right now to just think about, like, what's the next stage of that? How do you build upon the success of the Greenway, what that looks like in the future? We think a lot about shared spaces, whether they be parklands or areas where people can gather together. That's a really quintessential part of a community, and where people can find their space and also meet other people. That's a additional area we think a lot about. And one other one, and I won't touch upon them all, is our career pathways work. We are a fortunate region in that we have companies that are growing, entrepreneurs that are expanding. We have a huge growth in the healthcare sector taking place, but we need folks to fill those roles. So it's incumbent that maybe we have folks out there that are working in another job. How could they be upskilled? Maybe how they could embark on an apprenticeship. And we invest in, along with other partners, into the schools. And we are fortunate to have a number of very high quality schools here in Northwest Arkansas to help students discover their career pathways. It doesn't mean that you at any point have to go to college. You could find a track that's meant for you in a very fulfilling career that really has meaning to you. and affords you the ability to stay in Northwest Arkansas and have a career that you can call your own. So these are things that we focus on. In the Delta, it's a different strategy, different needs, different strategy, but largely we focus on education for the students in the Delta, teacher quality, teacher retention. We do a lot of work around asset building, whether it be credit building, first-time home ownership, small business creation, entrepreneurship. And then the other is bringing more partners to the Delta. The Delta, we've been invested there for a very long time. We are trying to draw other funders, other corporations who want to share in that vision. That's been very fun to watch because we've had some real success stories there where people maybe have thought about the Delta, but weren't quite sure on the approach, and we've created some mechanisms to make those introductions.
Yeah, fantastic. That's so exciting.
Yeah, I think about the opportunities that the Walton Family Foundation brings here. As you described them, some of them we knew about, and some, quite honestly, we don't. Is people? There's an opportunity here for everyone who wants to be here. It sounds like, to find a path, if you would. And we've spoken to some young people that we meet, and they'll tell us their story about, oh, I went around the country and I looked at 3 different areas that I thought I might want to go. But then they start to rattle off the differences of what they found here that they were comfortable with, which includes what they believed was opportunity, what they believed was an openness to people who weren't from here. Sometimes small towns have that, a little bit of a stigma, but that does not exist here. In fact, I share with friends of mine in Washington, D.C., that Northwest Arkansas itself reminds me a tiny bit of a small Washington, D.C. People from around the world, amenities that are very high quality, job opportunities, and good education, all those. And one thing that you don't necessarily get in larger towns sometimes, that feeling of safety. How does that play an impact in people coming to Northwest Arkansas and feeling safe and being a part of the community?
Yeah, I think it's something in many ways, no matter where you live, you may take for granted. However, we are largely benefited from that. And that's something people will talk about to some extent. But when you're in a place that you don't feel it, you know it immediately, or you're constantly barraged by the fact that the news or people talk about it. It's not something you hear here. Something that may create that feeling that you are not safe is much more of a rarity here. And I think part of it is the culture. Part of it is that we're still growing as a region. That's certainly part of what makes it unique. But to me, it's an underpinning of quality of life. That feeling of safety, kind of the basic human need, is an important part. If you're gonna make a place and continue to have it be vibrant, that's going to be an essential part.
Yeah. As you talked, I was struck by the number of times you used the word partners. You can't do this work alone. You're bringing in a lot of people, a lot of partnerships, nonprofits, community leadership. You mentioned faith leadership. Can you speak to that a little bit and how you're doing that?
Yeah, and our work is through partners. I mean, we are part of that picture, and I believe in the power of that. I've never been in a role, this being one, where you can do the work without others. It's not. I haven't either. It's a really hard thing to kind of think about. Like, how do you do that? But our partners, we are fortunate. We're very fortunate. We have some outstanding organizations here in Northwest Arkansas that have great leaders, boards, which are critically important, that are focused on what the mission is, and very proud to support those. So we typically work mostly with nonprofits, specifically what the IRS will call a 501c3. It's part of the code. I think a lot of people will know that designation. We also work directly with local governments, in some cases school districts. And then sometimes we will work with what's called an intermediary, a group that's working in other parts of the country doing specific work, and they come to the region in partnership with a local organization. Or maybe they're bringing something unique that we don't necessarily have, but that could be a benefit to the local community. So that's exciting in terms of who we work with. And we're an invite-only foundation. Some foundations are by application, that's a competitive application, but we are invite-only. And therefore, we're often always on the outlook for other partners or just trying to discern. Now, they have to fit strategy. That's like a key ingredient. And we try to always on our website just speak about those areas that we're focused on. And there's consistency because we think about that from 5-year strategic plans. But I always think it's incumbent on myself and the organization to always be listening to what's going on in the community. So getting out there, being present at events, listening to folks, like what are the challenges they're facing? For someone who's new here, what are they seeking? Are folks that have been here for generations, like what are they seeing that's worrying them about the region? These are good indicators. We also do something every 3 to 5 years called a quality of life survey. And that survey goes across both Washington and Benton counties, basically evenly represented. I'm proud to say they use cell phones, not just reliance on landlines. I know that can be an issue sometimes, but it's really encouraging to see how high the quality of life here, but also gives you indications of what's on people's minds, like what's the thing that they're worried about or what they think could affect quality of life in Northwest Arkansas.
Right. Okay. And you mentioned strategies are very different for Northwest Arkansas and the Delta, but the cornerstones of those strategies are similar. So can you speak a little bit to the differences between them? And so education is a cornerstone as an example, but you're doing different things in both areas of the region.
Yeah, in education is underpinnings, a cornerstone in both strategies. I like that word, cornerstone. Is thinking about education here. We have very dynamic school districts. I mean, we have school districts that are quite large, largest in the state of Arkansas, to some of the smaller rural districts. Most really have high quality programming for the students and really relying on like what they can do as a school district to benefit those students. We also have a lot of charter schools, private schools, a good variety. If you're looking to find the place for your kid, I think we offer a good variety around that. In the Delta, there's more limited choices. And because of some of the long-term economic factors, the Delta schools may have more of a challenge. So there have been a lot of changes going on in terms of the status of education there. The other challenge is getting teachers who will come from the area and really stay. So retention is another issue, and trying to make sure that teachers receive the certification they need. And it's not unique to the Delta, but in a lot of rural counties in particular, you find teachers that haven't reached their certification. Doesn't mean they're a bad teacher, it just means they may have not got the certification. So how do you work with teachers to get certified? Asset building is another cornerstone. Entrepreneurship's a good example here, or the efforts around housing, particularly when it comes to ownership of houses. In the Delta, it's similar, but what you find there is often a person that may have never thought that they could be a home buyer, but through some of the programming there is able to do that. The opportunity to actually open a small business, and sometimes in the Delta actually is more advantageous because you often have a lower cost of getting into operation, but you may have a much more limited customer pool. So you're trying to balance that. So we try to think about those things that come across. And then as we support organizations, whether it be their boards or parts of their growth, that's very similar. Because often in a nonprofit, the need related to like board governance or financial management is going to be similar, especially as a organization grows. So there's some similarities there.
Right. Yeah. And we've done a lot of work in that space, and I do see a lot of similarities across that. Entrepreneurship is another element you've mentioned several times. Ken and I moved here in '97, so I've been here for a long time. I've seen a lot of change, and my only regret is that I didn't invest in property earlier, right? But Ken and I incubated our software company in Colorado back in 2012.
Okay.
Because we really couldn't find those resources here.
Sure.
13 years later, we would not make that decision because there is so much here to support entrepreneurship here in Northwest Arkansas.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, and so it's been really exciting to see. I think it is not only a cornerstone, but also the presence of that effort to plant seeds for small businesses and build them leads to jobs and stability for the region. They are the future of what where the kids are going to work. Is kind of what that is. Can you speak to that a little bit in terms of how that fits into your strategy?
Well, you actually said like one of the big elements, like entrepreneurship is one of the biggest job creators in the country.
It is.
That's why
for sure
the spirit of it is important to catalyze. There's a program that we've introduced here locally in partnership with a number of our school district partners. I love the name. It's called Yippee. And what Yippee does, but I think this is really important, is you think about what point in life did you actually hear the first time the word entrepreneur? I mean, probably for a lot of people, it's later in life.
It's later.
You might have heard about it in college, or you might even not been exposed to it at all. This program is really designed to give kids their first taste at it, and not in a way that there's other programs that I think try to do this, but we piloted it 1 year and the uptake was so tremendous that we extended that through an additional period of time. So I think you want to introduce people to that concept and make it one of those possibilities. So like I said, college isn't for everybody, and nor should it be. Entrepreneurism could be a route. You don't have to go to college to be an entrepreneur. There's a lot of wonderful trades out there. So how do you expose kids at an early age to what all these possibilities are? That's a challenge, but also one that I think is going to be key to growing the region. Entrepreneurism also, like a lot of parts of the heartland, we do not receive the same type of capital infusion from the coast. If you go east or west, that's where so much of the capital, VC investors, et cetera. However, we have definitely seen momentum, and I credit a lot of organizations across the region that we have helped support to being a part of that. The work that the Northwest Arkansas Council is doing now to bring other capital organizations together for discovery visits where they can meet entrepreneurs here. They make it pretty easy, almost like speed dating, to meet entrepreneurs. And the fact that we've helped, along with the state of Arkansas, fund a number of accelerators to help businesses do exactly that, to grow their business, to help them meet others that are out there in the field. So those are a couple of examples, but the bottom line to me is job creation, and also the fact that entrepreneurs are often bringing their own sense of vibrancy. That creative ideation that occurs in trying to figure out like what this business is going to look like. And to overcome challenges and barriers, which is the biggest thing that a community needs to come together around, is how can we do that, right? Absolutely. So fascinating.
I agree, and I just think about what you're saying about entrepreneurs there. One of the things is they do bring that diversity of thought. They do bring new ideas. They will, again, continue to invigorate the region. I think the more we have come in here, and it's that diversity of thought that when we look across different places where we've worked with different cities, with different companies, it's when you stop having that you have to worry as a community. And I think we are really just on the tip of starting to really feel the actual benefit of that, of these new ideas. People coming in who want to not necessarily sit in an office, but they want to make impact in one way or another. Some of it's civic, some of it is going to be into the business world, and some will be for the government, municipalities, for example. But I like what you said too, because there are a lot of successful people who don't either have the means or don't want to invest in going through a 4-year degree or more, but they can still have great success.
Absolutely. And a lot of job satisfaction, like satisfaction in what they're helping create. That's a key part. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, it's not just about private entrepreneurs. We have a lot of social entrepreneurs here, people that are trying to come up with solutions that are more nonprofit based, are figuring out like these interesting areas of social impact. So that's also an area that both domestically and internationally, you get to see a lot of that happening here.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we wrap up today with our with this episode, can you share some information with our viewers and listeners about what they can do if they're really passionate about building community and making their communities better? What are some of the things that people with a passion for community building can do and proceed with to make their communities better?
Certainly. Part of it is figuring out like what works for you to engage. Admittedly, everybody's different time constraints, different family restraints, work, et cetera. But like what might be a fit for you? So it can be as small as a new neighbor moves in your apartment building or down the street. Do something to welcome them into the neighborhood. Even they may be even moving locally, but they're new to your neighborhood. So that simple outreach can make a big difference. You're making a point-to-point connection to somebody. Get involved locally, and that could look any number of ways. Pay attention to what's going on at the city level or the county level, just knowing what's going on. If you really want to get involved in a nonprofit, a number of local nonprofits want volunteers. Figure out if there's an organization or organizations you're passionate about, see if they may need your volunteer assistance. If you really want to get involved, a lot of organizations are often looking for board members. And that may be a little harder to discern, but reaching out to that organization, especially you're like, I want to get involved in something with children and families. Lots of organizations do that. Maybe that's a role that you could play, is being on the board. The other is thinking about engagement. If you're a business or organization that is a nonprofit or any kind of organization, getting involved in your local chamber and understanding what's going on there. There's lots of civic clubs that are here locally. You may decide that through your church or your place of faith that there's a way you could get involved. A number of congregations have that as an ability to take place. And the last I would add is when there's a call to action, something happens in the area. I think a lot of places will respond is just trying to find the place that makes sense for you.
Right.
And that may be something different for each person, but finding that real match. We are also fortunate. We have a lot of resources that you can subscribe to both on the web or otherwise. That folks can find out like where can you get involved in different things or what's going on. And I think the more you can actually subscribe to some of those and figure out like what's the right fit in terms of your information level, those could be great resources for you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing in this episode. We really look forward to the next episode. Ken, do you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, again, we would love it if you would follow and subscribe. But more importantly, if you're hearing this and thinking about this, how can you get involved? And where's your passion? And where can you utilize that, as Robert's been sharing with us, to be able to make a difference and to get gratification for doing that at the same time? So until next time.
Yes, we'll see you soon. Thanks for watching and listening. The Four Bars podcast has been brought to you by Edges Inc., a growth advisory firm based in Bentonville, Arkansas. I founded the company in 2001.
Edges promotes growth of people, companies, and ideas. Our team collaboration tool, called Interface Methods, is a basis for teams to work together more collaboratively, understand each other, and accept differences and address challenges together.
We also started a nonprofit called Unform Your Bias. We teach kids and their adult influencers how to utilize storytelling as a means to reduce bias in the world. We hope you'll check us out, subscribe to our podcast, and look at our websites.